everyone, and welcome back. You know we love to go deep on big ideas, and today is no exception. We're diving into that feeling of connection we all have with nature. Like, what is it about the outdoors that makes us feel so good? And why does it even matter in our modern world?
Yeah. It really is fascinating. It's like there's something about nature that just draws us in.
I mean, there's got to be more to it than just liking pretty views, right?
Absolutely. And researchers agree. They've actually given a name to this feeling we're talking about. It's called nature connectedness.
Okay, so we're not just making this up. There's actual science behind this.
Oh, yeah. And for this deep dive, we're drawing on a really interesting conversation from stoic.nu.
For anyone who doesn't know, stoic.nu is that platform that's always tackling these big, meaty social issues, right?
Right. And they had a human host and an AI partner discuss this whole nature connection thing. It's really fascinating.
I'm intrigued. What kind of stuff did they dig into?
Well, one of the things that really stood out to me was how they explored the evolutionary roots of this connection. Our ancestors were completely dependent on nature for survival.
Oh, yeah, of course. Like back in the day, you had to know where to find food and shelter, how to read the weather. It was life or death stuff.
Exactly. Imagine trying to survive without knowing which plants were safe to eat or where to find water. So it makes sense that over thousands of years, humans evolved to have this deep connection to nature.
So it's like this ancient instinct that's still wired into us, even if we don't have to hunt and gather anymore.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
And, it's not just some woo-woo concept. There's actual scientific evidence to support it. Studies have shown that being in nature can have a profound impact on our physiology. Like it can actually lower our cortisol levels.
Cortisol, that's the stress hormone, right?
And it can also activate our parasympathetic nervous system.
Wait, remind me, the parasympathetic nervous system is the one that helps us chill out, right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
It's all about rest and relaxation.
So basically, our bodies are literally hardwired to feel good in nature.
That's a great way to put it. And there's more. There's a whole field of study called environmental psychology, and they've done tons of research on this.
Oh, I'm all about the research. Tell me more.
Well, there are these two researchers, Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, who came up with something called attention restoration theory.
Okay, lay it on me. What is that all about?
Their research suggests that natural settings actually help restore our attention and focus. It's like nature gives our brains a break from all the overstimulation of modern life.
That makes a lot of sense. I always feel so much more clear-headed after spending time outdoors. It's like hitting the reset button on my brain.
Exactly.
But is this just about feeling good, or are there actual, tangible benefits to being connected to nature?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting. The conversation on stoic.nu really highlighted a whole cascade of benefits. We're talking improved mental health, boosted creativity, even stronger social connections.
Okay, whoa. So we're talking about some serious perks here. Let's break it down, though. What exactly are these benefits, and how do they actually work?
Let's start with mental health, because that's where the research is strongest. There have been so many studies showing that spending time in nature can reduce stress, anxiety, and even symptoms of depression.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Whenever I'm feeling stressed out, a walk in the park always helps me feel more grounded.
Exactly. It's like nature has this calming effect on our whole system.
But what about the physical side of things? Does being in nature benefit our bodies too?
Oh, for sure. Just think about it. Being in nature often encourages physical activity, even if it's just a leisurely walk or a hike. And then there's the fresh air.
Ah, that good old fresh air. Can't beat it.
It does wonders for us.
Okay.
Fresh air boosts our vitamin D levels, which is crucial for our immune systems and bone health. And have you noticed how much better you sleep after a day spent outdoors?
I have. I always sleep like a log after a day at the beach or hiking in the woods. Why is that?
Well, sunlight plays a big role in regulating our circadian rhythm. That's our natural sleep-wake cycle. So spending time in natural light during the day can actually help us sleep better at night.
It's amazing how it's all connected, like one big, beautiful system. But you mentioned something about nature boosting creativity. I'm curious about that. How does that work?
Remember we talked about attention restoration
Oh,
theory?
yeah, that's the one where nature helps our brains recharge, right?
Exactly. When our minds are constantly bombarded with stimuli, like in a busy city, our directed attention gets fatigued. Nature provides a break from that, allowing our minds to declutter and become more receptive.
It's like taking your brain on a mini vacation.
And that's when the creative juices start flowing.
So basically, nature is like a secret weapon for artists, writers, entrepreneurs, anyone who needs to tap into their creative side.
Exactly.
But let's be real for a second. We live in a world of distractions. How are we supposed to compete with the allure of our phones and all the other tech that's constantly vying for our attention?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
So how do we even begin to disconnect from the digital world and reconnect with nature?
Well, one thing that can help is mindfulness practices.
You mean like meditation, but in nature?
It can be that simple. Find a quiet spot in nature, close your eyes, and just focus on your senses. What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel?
Hmm. It's like turning a regular nature walk into a sensory experience.
Precisely. And that practice of mindful awareness can help us break free from the grip of technology and really immerse ourselves in the present moment.
I love that idea. It's like hitting the pause button on all the mental chatter and just being present with nature. As we're talking, I'm realizing that this whole nature connection thing isn't just about individual practices, right? There's a cultural and societal element to it, too.
Oh, absolutely. The way we view and relate to nature is definitely influenced by the culture we grew up in, the stories we've been told, the values we hold.
Yeah, for example, a lot of indigenous cultures have this deep spiritual connection to the natural world. They see nature as sacred and interconnected.
Exactly. In many indigenous cultures, nature isn't just a resource to be used, it's a living being to be respected and honored.
And I've always been fascinated by Eastern philosophies like Taoism and Buddhism, which emphasize living in harmony with nature.
Yes, these traditions often view humans as an integral part of the natural order, not separate from it.
It's amazing how different cultures have found such beautiful ways to connect with nature. But what happens when we start to lose that connection? What are the consequences of this growing disconnect between humans and the natural world?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and unfortunately not always a happy answer. The folks at stoichkrichi.nar went pretty deep on that. Well, it's not all doom and gloom, but it is important to acknowledge the potential downsides of neglecting this crucial part of ourselves. Missing out on all those benefits we were just talking about.
Yeah, like less stress, better sleep, more creativity. Those are some pretty big things to lose out on.
Right. It's like we're depriving ourselves of a vital source of nourishment, not just for our bodies, but for our minds and souls as well.
It makes you wonder if there's like a real cost to being disconnected from nature.
And there is. Actually, there's growing evidence that this disconnect contributes to something researchers are calling nature deficit disorder.
Wait, is that a real thing? Like an actual medical
No, it's
diagnosis?
not an official medical diagnosis yet, but the term highlights the very real negative impacts of a nature-deprived lifestyle, especially for kids.
Oh, wow. So are we talking like increased anxiety, difficulty focusing, maybe even the higher risk of things like obesity and depression?
Exactly. And the consequences go way beyond individual well-being, too. When we lose our connection to nature, we become less likely to care about environmental issues.
It's like we forget that we're part of this intricate web of life, not just observers of it.
And that disconnect can lead to some pretty unsustainable practices like excessive consumption and apathy towards things like climate change.
So it's like a vicious cycle, right? The less time we spend in nature, the less we care about protecting it, and the worse the environmental problems become.
Unfortunately, yes. And in the end, we all pay the price.
Because our planet's health is ultimately tied to our own well-being.
That's right.
Okay, so it sounds like we're at a pretty critical point here. We need to find a way to bridge this gap between humans and the natural world.
I agree. And a lot of it comes down to rethinking how we design our world. The conversation on Stoke Night New talked about this idea of renaturing our lives.
Renaturing, I like that. So what would a more nature-connected world actually look like?
Well, imagine cities designed with green spaces at their core. Parks, community gardens, rooftop farms, all woven into the urban fabric.
Instead of concrete jungles, we'd have these vibrant green oases right in the heart of our cities.
Exactly. And imagine workplaces and schools that incorporate natural elements.
Yeah. Like, I would love to work in a building that had a rooftop garden or something, A place where you could take a break and recharge, surrounded by nature.
And there's research showing that even just having plants in an office can reduce stress and boost productivity. So it's a win-win.
Absolutely. And what about schools?
Oh, think about the impact on kids. Schools with outdoor classrooms and nature playgrounds where kids can learn and play in a natural setting.
It sounds like we're talking about a pretty big shift in how we think about our relationship with nature.
It is. But it's a shift we need to make if we want to create a healthier, happier, and more sustainable future for everyone.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the science, the benefits, the consequences of losing that connection, and even some pretty inspiring visions for the future.
And you know what really struck me from the Stokagi.nu conversation? It's this idea that feeling connected to nature isn't just a personal choice, it's a collective responsibility.
Because ultimately, we're all in this together, right? The fate of our planet is intertwined with our own well-being.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with this. If nature is truly a part of who we are, not just a pretty backdrop, what does that mean for how we live our lives, how we design our world, and how we shape our future?
That's a powerful question to ponder. And I think the answers, both individually and collectively, will determine the course of our relationship with nature for generations to come. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It really is a call to action, to actively bring nature back into our lives and our communities. Like, it's not enough to just appreciate it from a distance.
Yeah, we need to find ways to actually weave it back into the fabric of our everyday lives.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But where do we even begin? I mean, we've been talking about these big picture shifts, but what can our listeners actually do right now in their own lives?
Well, first of all, don't underestimate the power of those small everyday actions we talked about earlier.
Right, like choosing a nature-based activity that resonates with you.
Exactly. And making it a regular practice, whether it's gardening or bird watching or even just taking a mindful walk in the park.
Yeah, anything that helps you connect with nature on a deeper level.
And, as you start to deepen your own connection, share it with others. Talk to your friends and family. Tell them what you're learning.
It's like that saying, enthusiasm is contagious. I bet you could inspire a whole bunch of people to get out there and experience nature in a new way.
Definitely. And you don't have to be an expert to make a difference either. You can support organizations that are working to protect natural spaces or volunteer at a local park or garden.
Oh, and even something as simple as picking up trash when you're out on a walk can have a positive impact.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps.
It's really about taking ownership of our relationship with nature, both individually and collectively. And speaking of collective action, we shouldn't forget about the power we have as citizens to advocate for change.
Oh, that's so important.
Like speaking up for more green spaces in our cities, supporting policies that protect the environment, voting for leaders who prioritize these issues.
Yeah. Our voices matter, and we can use them to create a world where nature isn't just an afterthought, but an integral part of our lives.
It's really about a fundamental shift in our thinking, isn't it? From seeing ourselves as separate from nature to understanding that we're all interconnected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen overnight. It's a journey, a process of reconnecting with something that's essential to who we are.
So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace this journey. Get out there and explore the natural world, nurture that connection, share your experiences, and let's work together to create a future where both humans and nature can thrive.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time. Keep exploring.